You could also have silent endo. Zero pain, zero suffering, no murder scene periods. Everything's great. You get on the fertility journey. Things aren't really making, math isn't mathing. You start doing some research. You go in for a surgery and they're like, oh, you have lesions all over. Your organs are tied together, all of these things. So you can have silent endo. Now, most of us with the endometriosis diagnosis had some type of pain or discomfort. I don't know that if I didn't have the pain, I wouldn't have been searching. Like, despite all my other illnesses, the pain was really the red flag for me, the passing out in the bathroom. Let's talk about some of the symptoms. So symptoms for everyone can be different. So I'm going to just rattle off some symptoms. I'll tell you mine and then I'll tell you some more generic ones. But remember, I could line up 10 people that have endometriosis. There will be 10 different lengths of time that it took to get diagnosed.
Which ones were mine. So you can go with
so we can all talk about different diagnoses. So everyone's timeline is going to be different. Took me 16 years. I recently just had a client come on. It took her 6 months. I'm like, that's amazing, right? Because most people, it takes 8 to 10 years. And the brown and Black community, we lean in towards more of that 12 to 16. I mean, sometimes can be 20 years. Some of you are suffering in silence right now. Had no idea that there was even a disease that encompassed all of this. So endometriosis symptoms, I'll talk about the hormonal ones, right? The period cramps, what I call the murder scene periods. You're running back and forth to the bathroom. You can have a lot of cramping, a lot of pelvic pain, a lot of bleeding within your cycle and outside of your cycle. And that's one of the biggest ones that people miss. They're just like, oh, I have 2 periods a month, or, oh, my periods are, 2.5 weeks. Possibly, right? I'm a doctor, not yours. I'm not diagnosing, but typically there's going to be that component of where those endometriosis lesions are inflamed, and that's what you're having, not necessarily 2 periods. You can have hormonal headaches, hormonal acne. Sometimes with all of that chronic inflammation, you can have vision changes, hearing changes around your cycle. So I had a point where I had to wear contacts, but there were times I'd have to take them out and wear my glasses, which were stronger because my vision would change. I would get very inflamed. And so like literally I had to have 2 different prescriptions. You can get very inflamed in your gut area. Now that can look like diarrhea. It can look like constipation. There's also something called endobelly. So I want to distinguish between that. Now there's bloating of where I'm bloated. I'm going to put on a baggy t-shirt, right? I'm going to wear a sweater, right? Well, some of y'all it's pretty hot here. I'm in Arizona, so it was like 90 degrees today, even in November. So we can't do the sweater weather doesn't quite work here. We just going to be bloated. That's just what it's going to be. Versus an endobelly where it's distended. But the thing is, it's hot to touch. Sometimes it will radiate heat. An endobelly, like legit, I'm just going to bring it to you. A bra would be uncomfortable. Your leggings, your baggiest pants will be uncomfortable. Even sometimes wearing your underwear, just that elastic coming in and touching that skin, that's endobelly. So there's the bloating of where you're like, oh, I ate something that doesn't work for me. And then endobelly where you could be hungry, starving, but still not able to take down water or food. Like you're just so uncomfortable. You can have that chronic pain throughout your body, a lot of unexplained diagnoses. Most people with endometriosis have the diagnosis of IBS. I mean, one way or another, they don't know what's going on with your stomach. Most of you have had tons of colonoscopies, tons of endoscopies. You're always like, they're rotor-rootering trying to figure out what's going on.
Did you have to have a colonoscopy before you were diagnosed?
So where am I at? I've had 5 colonoscopies. So I'm 44 years old. I've had 5 colonoscopies. And guess what? Having one November 22nd. The only reason, I'm just throwing out all my business out here. The only reason I'm doing this colonoscopy is I actually haven't talked about this. So you guys are getting the tea before I talk about it on my podcast, is because I had a lot of inflammation in my gut about, I think it was 3 years ago, because I was looking at my Facebook memories. God saved me. I was about to have a surgery. So 19 centimeters of my bowel popped out. So I was in excruciating pain. I went in, they gave me the whole, I think you ate too much for the holidays. And I'm like, I don't think that's what it is. And they rushed in and was like, you need to have an emergency surgery. However, the physician that was willing to do the surgery told me he had been working for 4 days straight, but he was willing to get a coffee and do the surgery. And that's where I had to advocate and be like, I think I'm going to pass. If you've been up for 96 hours straight during the scandemic, I'm good. I'm not going to be catching a surgery. So I went to a specialist, and then the day of my surgery, they did another MRI. The night before, I was in horrible pain. So essentially, my bowel got really inflamed. It popped out, and then it retracted. So that was awesome, right? You're like, thank God I don't have to have surgery. It was a miracle, legit.
Because you was about to go on a knife the other day.
Yes, honey, I was going. However, I believe what we're seeing is I'm having some gut issues on this left side. And what we think happened is when it retracted, I think it got a little pinched up. So that's why we're going to go in and do a colonoscopy. Like I said, you guys are getting the tea about it, which I will talk about on my Instagram, my podcast. You're just getting firsthand information. So that will be my 6th colonoscopy. But I had so many colonoscopies. Like, and it's interesting when I get a new doctor, they're always like, oh, they just assume a cancer diagnosis. So they're like, oh, are you in remission? I'm like, well, yeah, my endo's in remission, but there's no cancer diagnosis.